If you're new here, my name is RuthAnn. My husband Lance was a service-connected, disabled U.S. Navy veteran. He was sick for 25 of the 27 years we were together, and for the last 12 years of his life, I was his full-time caregiver. This podcast is about caregiving in all its forms. My friend Jenna joins me to share her perspective as a stay-at-home mom who homeschooled her 5 children. At first, our lives seem very different, but we found we actually have a lot in common. So we share what connects us, hoping it helps you find your connections too. Today, we're going to talk about self-awareness. And that's something that's really important no matter where you are in life. But it was especially important for me when I was a caregiver because knowing myself meant that I knew my limitations. It meant that I knew my emotions, why I was reacting to things the way that I was, and it helped me set boundaries. And as I move forward, it's been really important in setting boundaries for my new life too. So Jenna and I are going to have a conversation about this, and I'm really excited about this, Jenna.
Yeah, me too. Good topic and something that I probably talk about quite a bit. I know with my kids and just with myself, just learning about me. And, we've talked about being the expert on ourselves. And a huge part of that is self-awareness. So good topic of conversation.
Well, this is something that I don't think that I was really that self-aware until after Lance got his first diagnosis. I think it's really cool that you're teaching your kids about this at a young age because I didn't learn about it until I was in my 20s. And then after Lance had his first diagnosis, I realized then how stressed out it made me to just everything that I gave up to take care of him and how exhausted I was. And I learned that I needed to take care of myself. And then I recognized those feelings later as his disease progressed.
I think an important part of this conversation too is understanding that knowing yourself and being self-aware is kind of the antidote to self-consciousness. So I know that was something that I struggled with when I was younger. And I think everyone does to some degree. But when I was younger, I know I would, kind of think, oh, what do people think about me? Do people think I'm this? Do people think I'm that? And there was all this anxiety around other people's opinions or perceptions of me. And it wasn't until I got to be a little bit older, probably I would say in my 20s or 30s, it was while, kind of raising kids that I started questioning that part of myself because I could see how debilitating it was to people and to myself to constantly be focused on people's perceptions of me. So looking at myself, right? And then trying to guess how people are perceiving me. And all that did was produce a lot of anxiety. So when I started taking the time to be aware of myself, what do I do? Why do I do it? How does that impact the environment around me? How does that impact me? How do people respond to that? When I started asking those questions of myself, it put me in the driver's seat. I got to determine how I wanted to respond, how I wanted to behave, how I wanted to act. And also, I was aware of how my environment impacted me. So it put me in the driver's seat rather than someone else and the fear over their opinion or the fear over their perception of me. Rather, I just got to be honest about who I am and why I am that way and make changes as I saw things that I didn't like about myself.
So being self-aware really helps you to be self-confident too. And I found that myself. All the years that I cared for Lance, it helped me better take care of myself, but it also helped me be a better advocate because I knew what my limitations were. And like I already said, it helped me set boundaries. And A lot of people don't like boundaries, but people who don't like boundaries are the ones who like to walk all over them. So that makes it even more important to set those boundaries. And having that self awareness was really essential for me being able to do that.
I definitely think boundaries were a hard thing for me. Well, if I'm honest, they've always been a hard thing for me. I don't like to disappoint people. I don't like to, I don't, I've never been one to care as much about whether or not people like me. Um, I just don't care that much whether people like me or don't like me, because I've always had the opinion that if you don't like me, then you don't have to be in my life. I don't need to be friends with everyone. But I've always struggled with being concerned about whether or not people believe things about me that are not true or are not correct. So when I encountered people who I felt like formed an opinion of me that was not consistent with the me that I was attempting to portray, or the me that I was attempting to present to the world, that really bothered me. I wanted to be authentic and to have people perceive me the way that I was trying to present myself. So when there was any kind of disagreement between those two things, that really bothered me. So I always felt the need to explain myself to people, which is can be a fruitless endeavor, but nonetheless, I still tried.
Well, do you think that you've gotten past that at all? Because there's not really anything that you can do about other people's perceptions, what they think about you. And I think that's something that I learned really early on is people are just going to believe what they're going to believe. And I can explain myself. I will usually do it once. And if once isn't good enough, then it's not my problem.
I'm still learning to be comfortable with um, allowing any length of time for people to get to know me. So that I think is something that I'll probably just always, maybe not struggle with, but that will always hit me kind of differently. And I'll have to be conscious about whether or not I'm allowing that to alter the way I interact with them. So that's what I've found for me is if I saw someone was responding in a way that wasn't consistent with what I was trying to portray or trying to communicate, I that's what makes me anxious. I feel compelled um, to change how I'm reacting or how I'm communicating to try and speak their language, I guess. So this has been several years ago, I had a coworker tell me, "Did you know that you always say, does that make sense?" And I was a little bit taken aback because I wasn't prepared to have this conversation. And I said, well, it sounded very much like a criticism at first. And then I thought, oh, wait, I do always say that. And so I said, well, yeah, I do say that because I want to make sure that I'm communicating effectively. So if I'm saying something to you, I want to make sure that you understand it in the way that I've communicated. And the way I do that is to say, does that make sense? So that conversation with her, because this woman is like socially flawless. I always feel kind of clunky around her because she just is so graceful, and I don't know, she just has this sense about her. I always tell her she could be a hand model because she's so graceful with her movements and her interactions with people. And I'm kind of like a big slobbery like lab. I just like jump up on people and get excited and say, "Hi, how are you?" So I always feel kind of awkward around her. Having her tell me something about myself, it really kind of took me back. But when I went away and thought about it, I thought, no, that's how I am. And that is my strength, is I do seek to communicate effectively with people. And the interaction made me stop and think about something about myself that I knew was there, but hadn't consciously been aware of it. And it made me kind of make a determination. Is this something about me that's valuable that I want to maintain? Do I need to adjust it? Is it off putting to people? Does it negatively impact my relationships? Does it negatively impact me? What do I think about this? And that right there is, I think, the value of self awareness is being able to determine what about yourself is worth keeping and nurturing and cultivating, and what about yourself needs kind of killed off and carved away and done away with. Like, you have to be able to go, it's like cleaning out the closet of you. You gotta keep the things that are valuable and get rid of the things that aren't serving you and are just cluttering up, your person. So that was, it's such a like silly example, but that one interaction, oh yeah, I do say that, and here's why. Then I felt better about it.
And all of those things that you just said, that's where I'm at now, really looking at who I am and how the things that I do and the things that I feel, how I react to things and how I interact with people. I'm thinking about all those things now. When I was a caregiver, I was thinking about how everything impacted Lance and me right now and how it would impact us in the future, because that was where I needed to be. I couldn't concern myself with everyone else because it was just too overwhelming. And then there was a period of time after he died where I've talked before about the fog that I lived in, and that fog did not completely lift until 3 years after he died. And during that period of time, I had very little self awareness, and I wasn't working towards gaining that back because I was at a point where I was just trying to survive. So, for anyone listening to this, none of this is a criticism of how you're doing things, especially if you're in survival mode, which I was in survival mode a lot. But like I said in the beginning, being aware of myself from the beginning of Lance's first diagnosis, or right after his first diagnosis, helped me through the next 25 years of his life, because I really needed to be able to set boundaries. I needed to know my limitations, and I just needed to know how things were affecting me so that I could take care of myself to be the best caregiver that I could be.
That's a really, I think, important point because, like I said, I didn't have very good self awareness when I was younger. And when I was raising my kids when they were really little, um, I spent a lot of time kind of feeling like I needed to be doing things different. So everyone has an opinion on how you're going to do things, whether it's how you're going to, you know, plan out a menu for the week, or how you're going to do your laundry, or, how you're going to educate your kids, like how you discipline them, how whatever. Like, there's 1,000 different, how you take care of yourself as a mom. Like, there's just criticism, criticism, criticism. And so I think if I had had a better sense of myself and why I was doing things the way I was doing them, it would have alleviated a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. There would have been a lot less tears. And I think it would have made me into a better mom because I could have focused just on my kids and the job that I was doing. I could have focused on just taking care of them, where that's what you are, or that's what I'm hearing from you, is that you were better able to care for Lance because you were able to put up those boundaries that came from a greater self-awareness. Um, like I said, I didn't have that, as I wasn't as consistent with it when I was younger. I just really felt like everyone else had it figured out and I was stumbling through life. And I, if I could go back and tell younger me one thing, it would be like, you're doing a good job. Just don't worry about everyone else.
Well, I will say that even though I was self aware and I was able to set those boundaries, it still hurt when people criticized me. It still hurt when people were mean about things, but it didn't make me stop doing what I knew was best for us. And looking back on all those years, I'm glad that I did it the way that I did it because we were able to have a really good life despite everything that we went through because I was able to set those boundaries. I knew our limitations and I just stuck with it. So, well, I hope that this has been a helpful episode. And thanks for joining me, Jenna. I will see you next time.
All righty. Bye.